One of the tools I use to help people in my practice as a therapist is a cycle that's kind of meant to be the opposite of a shame spiral. And what I've noticed is that we need different types of validators of our sense of good enough to overcome all the narrations, the little thoughts to ourselves from our inner critics that come after we mess up and don't live up to our standards, or interpret, or somebody tells us that we didn't live up to our society's standards, the people around us and their standards. And for every time I've had one of those instances in life where I didn't feel good enough for some reason or another, I've at least played it back a few times that I made the mistake and felt a little worse about it. A lot of times in the past, when I would really shame spiral, I would think for days about having made mistakes, and feel as if I wasn't good enough. And one of the things that happens there is we repeat narratives that we're not good enough, like hundreds of times in a shame spiral. And so here we want to do the opposite. We want to look for reasons that we're good enough and cycle through them, right? Times when we know we lived up to our own standards in a moment, right? Internal validators of a sense of good enough, right? And when we look at the system there, that most corresponds to guilt. When I'm feeling guilty, like I didn't stand for my own standards, but I appeased the standards of the people around me and people pleased, right? It's really my internal validators of my sense of good enough that are the internal resource I need in that moment, right? But I'm gonna cycle through and I'll emphasize those, right? In a moment of shame, we're really going to be leaning more on external validators of our sense of good enough. Times where people in our community told us that they appreciated us, or that we did a good job here, right? Something we've done well. They say we're good enough because of some reason, right? And different people have different weight. Our people that we respect or admire, and their statements about us being good enough, they're going to have more weight. People we feel love and belonging with, that we feel safety with, that we feel respect us on our yeses and nos, they're going to have more weight, right? And so I'm going to think about the words of those people and what they say about me more than the community maybe. But even then, we might look at, paid my taxes on time. Even the IRS says I'm good enough in some way. And that's not something I can own right now, maybe, but in general. When we look at the last one here, we look for things that line up, both internal and external validation. So things that we agree with from the community, or that the community would probably agree with about ourselves, right? Things that everybody agrees is good enough. And that's because a lot of these external validators of our sense of good enough are things that sometimes we don't feel ourselves, right? We don't know if it's true when somebody says we've done a good job. We don't own it sometimes. So we can use that as an external validator, but we can't own it, right? And so over here, we want things that we can own and other people would confirm, okay? And then another one. And then we just keep going until that feelings in the gut or the chest are or worked with, and we're not in the middle of a shame spiral. This is another way to be well and a little weller all the time.